Pastor, condoning bad faith is bad faith. Basically, if the church condones bad faith, the state will enforce the church's decision. And that's where we find ourselves today on Sunday, April 19th, 2020. Really, it's this simple, right? Because the church in America condones bad faith acts by people pretending to have oaths of office, well, then the state's fine to let that happen. And the Supreme Court has said that the secular courts have no jurisdiction in matters of faith. It's all up to the church. The church needs to call it out, and then they'll do something about it. Now, I don't know exactly what that mechanism is. I'm just saying it starts at the church, right? When the pastor's sitting there in front of the congregation and looks out there and sees attorneys and judges and state representatives and his county commissioner and the township commissioner, he's over there, and there's his family back there. Well, none of these people have taken a proper oath of office in accordance with the laws of the United States, and they're acting in bad faith. In fact, they took the Lord's name in vain, right? So not only are they acting in bad faith as far as the country would be concerned, but as far as Christianity would be concerned. So what are we talking about with bad faith? Well, it's double-mindedness, double-heartedness, duplicity, fraud, or deception. Hey, I think they go together. Well, deception, that would be like somebody putting a fictitious name on a document and then claiming it to be their oath of office and filing it into a record when it doesn't have the proper wording for the oath that's required by the Constitution. Actually, not by the Constitution, but by the first law passed after the Constitution was ratified that says this is the oath that satisfies the 6th article of the Constitution. And nobody's filling out that oath. Instead, and in that oath, there is no "so help me God," but instead people take an oath that says "so help me God," which is a direct violation of the Constitution because it says you can't have a religious test in your oath. And yet, the preachers are sitting up there and let it all happen. And they might say, well, there's nothing we can do. We're preachers. No, that's not true. You have an American flag in your building. That means you're part of the wartime government that we are under now that's been in place since the time of the Civil War. Lincoln declared martial law, 1861. It was ratified 1863. 1863, out comes the Lieber Code. And in the second article of the Lieber Code, it says that once martial law has been established, it can only be ended by a special proclamation by the commander-in-chief or a treaty of peace. Well, that didn't happen after the Civil War, so we're in a war domestic. And it didn't happen after the First World War, so we're in a war international, right? We have enemies, domestic, or foreign and domestic. And what they've made happen is that nobody's doing their paperwork right to have any authority under the Constitution. And, they don't care that we don't know that that's important. They know it's really important, so they just carry on with business as normal. It's a really, really sick way to make a living, but as it turns out, apparently there's a bunch of sick things happening that hopefully all comes to the light and we can grieve over it and move on to a better day, but we need to get to that point. So, hey, I'm Staff Sergeant Robert Allen Vertluski, U.S. Army veteran. DOD ID number 12112800006. I'm currently a POW of the state of Michigan, by the way. But if you wanted to email me, you could at courtofrecord@aol.com. As long as the phone's working, there's the phone number. You could mail me at Robert Allen Vertluski, 10955, 14 Mile Road Northeast, Rockford, Michigan, 49341. That is my place of confinement. And if you can send me a care package to that address or to PayPal at robryder@aol.com. That's ROBBRYDER @aol.com. It's my PayPal account name, and I could certainly use your help. And part of this, so what I found out, I've been doing a lot of videos here recently that all tie together. And so just so we can get this part out of the way, if you were to go back to Rob Ryder with 3Bs on YouTube, search by upload date, and go back to reading the back of the can, which was really only a month ago, you will see in this last month I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 videos, all of them at least, well, most of them at least an hour long, some almost 2 hours long, so forth and so on. That all have to do with what we're talking about today, right? And, so I really can't tell you everything that's in those videos, but everything I'm talking about today was talked about in these other videos at some length. And, if you're on lockdown anyways, you want something different to watch, well, watch those videos. But in doing that, I had read in Bouvier's, right, that it says that this is the definition of people. The word people occurs in a policy of insurance. The insurance insures against detriments to kings, princes, and people. Well, then it turns out there's a thing called insurance bad faith, and it's a strict liability tort. If you look up insurance bad faith in Wikipedia, it says insurance bad faith is a legal term of art unique to the law of the United States, but with parallels elsewhere, particularly Canada, which would probably mean, well, that would be all of England then, because we're talking Canada, which is a dominion of the United. Is it a dominion of England, United Kingdom, Britain? What would be the proper term? Anyways, that describes a tort claim that an insured person, that would be us, because we're the people, have against an insurance company for its bad acts. Under United States law, insurance companies owe a duty of good faith and fair dealing to persons they insure. This duty is often referred to as implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing, which automatically exists by operation of law in every insurance contract, which is outstanding to know because I have this ongoing case right now, or insurance claim, with the state of Michigan that as part of those videos I just showed you, where I'm saying that because these people don't have a proper oath of office, they can't enforce the law. And the fact that they did, well, that makes it a tort, and I want the insurance company to pay the claim, because under liability insurance, the reason they have the insurance is to protect me from them. So I'm an insured under their liability insurance. And I've gotten guys that are public adjusters, right, or adjusters for the public, right? They're the ones that are supposed to work on our behalf in an insurance claim. There's two types of adjusters, one that works for the insurance company and one that works for the insured. I'm talking about the ones that work for the insured, who normally chase fires and tornadoes and stuff, but they could do casualty claims. They could do liability claims. They could do all sorts of things. They have all sorts of authority. They're basically investigators licensed by the state. So we need to find a way to use them, but that's what I was trying to do. And before I had talked to one, I had sent some paperwork in, and now I've gotten an answer back from the insurance company that says they're not going to pay my claim. But I can see on the document there's all sorts of errors, and right, so that's all another video. But that's what got me to be looking at this and say, well, heck, it says that people is on a policy of insurance. Well, that would be the Constitution. We the people of the United States. So who's the insurance company, right? Who insured this contract? We need to go file a tort claim with them. And this is where these SF-95 forms that are really tort claims to file for claims against the United States are for. It's just that because we're now under martial law, maybe we need to be sending them to the Army, because the Army is really in charge, and everything that we see that could possibly be the government and be properly done would be as some sort of military occupational government. But it's not anything to do with the Constitution, with constitutional officers, because none of these people have an oath of office. As I pointed out time and time and time again, but I'm not leaving the truth. I'm going to say it again, right? I'm going to stand on the truth and defend it. So let me start defending the truth a little bit. Give me just a second to load up a few things. Hang on here. Okay then, before I start beating on the bad, let's look at what we have working to our advantage, especially if you're a preacher. Okay, I don't care how small your church is or how big your church is, right? But what I do care about is, do you have a gold fringe flag in that church, or do you have any flag in that church? Because you're not supposed to use those. You can use those privately how you want, but that's an official use of the flag when it's in a church, because the Army would consider that a chapel. I've done a lot of videos on this information, so it's in the videos I talked about. But if you want to read it yourself, you can look in Army Regulation 840-10, 840-10, right? But if you have that flag, so here's D.C., right? There's the White House. Here's the Capitol. Here's the Supreme Court building. Here's the Library of Congress. And if we were to slowly come in closer and closer and closer, eventually it won't be able to hide it anymore. Well, they're really trying to. How come you're not showing up? There you are. All right, this is the United Methodist building, which is, it's and right behind it, the Reserve Officers Association, right, which is the General Board of Church and Society as a proprietor, United Methodist building. The structure is adjacent to the U.S. Capitol and the Supreme Court. As a public witness to justice and peace, the United Methodist building offers an ecumenical and interfaith setting for rich dialogue and social action. The United Methodist building is the only non-government building on Capitol Hill. It houses the Washington office of a number of ecumenical groups: the Episcopal Church, the Presbyterian Church, the Church of Christ, the Lutheran Services, the Church World Service, Islam Society of North America, and a host of others. Right? You all have a seat on Capitol Hill. Well, you need to go complain over to the Supreme Court about bad faith. But as I pointed out in my last video, when you read Rule 45 of the Supreme Court, it says that all process issuing out of that court is done in the name of the President of the United States. So somehow we need to petition the government, and we're going to cover that also here, to tell them, look, these other people don't have a proper oath of office. It's bad faith. We want something done about it. We want everybody to go back and take proper oath of office. Now, this building, right, was built like in 1918. And so what had happened, because to me, this is deeper than just a bunch of church groups in a building. What happened in the First World War is the church groups got together and they created a public charity. And so did the Catholic Church, and so did the Jews. And then these public charities were given a commission by the War Department during a time of war, and that war is still going, so they still have their commission. It's just kind of, hid behind the surface of what's been put on top of it since, but, it's still there. And hang on here. No, that's not it. We'll get to this in a minute. Hang on a second. I'm sure that the Protestant groups and the Jewish groups probably have the same thing, but back in the day, 1917, when all this was going on, the Catholic Church actually came up with a handbook for what they called the National Catholic War Council. And in here, it talks about the different Protestant denominations have organized for war purposes under the title, the General Wartime Commissions of the Federal Churches of Christ in America. Well, what is that today? Right? Because that's the thing that got the commission back in the day, right? And we may have changed name using a different name for business now, but at some level that still exists. And the guy that, sanctioned the Methodist building was one of the people that was at this, putting this thing together, this General Wartime Commission on the Federal Churches of Christ in America. And then the Jews, Orthodox and Reformed, under the Jewish Welfare Board of the United States Army and Navy, what is it called today? And the National Organization for War Work of the Catholic Church is the National Catholic War Council. Well, today, right, that's the USCCB, the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, where it says in its history, the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops took its present form in 2001 from the consolidation of the National Conference of Catholic Bishops and the United States Catholic Conference. The USCCB traces its origins to the National Catholic War Council, which was founded in 1917. So these are not parts of the church. They're, civil organizations that the church created under the laws of the United States that were given a commission by the War Department, and they still have their commission. And so you need to go to the military and tell them there's something wrong. Now, one way to do that would be to go to these people here, this Armed Forces Chaplains Board. Right, this board has got Major General, Brigadier General, Rear Admiral, Major General, Brigadier General. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 general officers on it. Well, what's their duties? Is an organization entity within the United States Department of Defense established to advise Secretary of Defense and the other Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness on religious, ethical, moral matters in a number of policy issues affecting religious ministry and support of the free exercise of religion within the military services. Well, if it's not a moral matter to have filed an oath in bad faith, then I don't know what is. Now, I've tried to contact these people, right? This is Office of Undersecretary for Personal Readiness. And I've written to Commander Riley. I've tried to call his office. I can't get anybody to call me back. And I just keep telling people the same thing. Hey, these people don't have a proper oath of office. They're not doing it right. But I don't have any authority for some reason. And, until I can get my ID card as I believe I should have as a veteran, that all veterans are still in the military. We should still all have our ID cards. I got to rely on somebody else. So I'm going to go to the church, because the church and the state are connected through the military. And we're under military government. We're not under a constitutional government. That shit went away, right? It isn't happening. And now I'm going to start showing you the evidence that what you think is the Congress and as a judge of the United States and so forth, they're not. They're all administrative. They're at best working under the administrative branch. So give me a second to load a few more things up here. Okay, so we'll start hammering in a second. Let's just tidy up a bit and get a few more things lined up. So this is the 6th article of the Constitution, and it says, senators, representatives, before mentioned, the members of the several state legislatures, so it'd be like the Michigan House of Representatives and the senators of Michigan, and all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, so federal and state, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution. But no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. Well, then why do they take an oath that says, so help me God? I just don't understand that. But this is what it's all based on right here. All these people, right? Everybody. Now, the president is an executive officer of the United States, so he has to do this. And if we were to go look at his oath in the 2nd article, you would see that it does not support the Constitution. It doesn't say support the Constitution, right? And other oaths do. So he has to take 2 oaths. And this is what they did. They take one simple thing and they cut it in half, and now you have to do 2 to satisfy the one thing that used to be very simple. Well, now there's 2 of them, and they're going to go hide part of it, some little detail. And if you don't do that, well, then you haven't complied with the law and you don't have any authority. So this is what they've done to Donald John Trump, right? They let him pretend to take the oath that's in the 2nd article, but he hasn't done the oath that satisfies the 6th article. which is in 1 Stat 23. We'll see in a minute. It was actually written into a particular law. It says, this is the oath to take, satisfy the 6th article. Well, he hasn't done it. The Senate hasn't done it. Your House of Representatives hasn't done it. Your county commissioner hasn't done it. Your sheriff hasn't done it. The state police commander hasn't done it. The governor hasn't done it. It goes on and on and on. These people haven't done it. They don't have proper oath of office. It's bad faith. And they're sitting out in the church. Preacher. Right? So, do something. Go tell them you can't do this. You need to find an honest attorney. You got an attorney sitting there. Ask him, say, any honest attorney in this congregation, please meet me after the meeting. And see if anybody shows up. Because, they can't, what we're asking them to do is not the way they normally do it in this fictitious world that we've been subjected to, but to do it right. So that's how it is in America, if you didn't know that. Let's look at some other things we have that we could use to our advantage. The Supreme Court of the United States, right? The First Presbyterian Church, USA, of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and James D. Miller versus John Doe. I didn't know you could take John Doe to court, Supreme Court, but apparently you can. Because again, this is not an original action, right, in the name of the President of the United States, which it says in Rule 45, all proceedings from this court are in the name of the President of the United States. In fact, I'm going to go get that and show it to you. It's just too important to leave set without showing. Just so you can see where it all came from, right? Here we are, supremecourt.gov. Rules, Supreme Court of the United States. Tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. We get a PDF. And, we'll just take a second. You go through all the rules here. And what we're talking about is Rule 45, which is process and mandates. But there's also Rule 40, which I didn't get a chance to talk to. It's to do with veterans and military cases and filing for free, which is something I want to do, right? So if any honest attorneys listening, please contact Rob Ryder. I want to use Rule 40 and file a claim as a veteran because I've never been released from the military and I can't get my ID. Well, that's act of bad faith. It's fraud. Okay, but Rule 45. Let's go take a look at Rule 45 here. Rule 45. Where it says, all process of this court issues in the name of the President of the United States. Now, how does that happen? How do you get the name of the President of the United States on your process in the Supreme Court? When you've done that, you are the boss. I think it has something to do with using the guy that's called the Solicitor General, which is the only man by law that has to be learned in the law to hold his office in the United States is the Solicitor General. Must be learned in the law. It's written into his job description. So, he's just down the road, people, from the Methodist building. This is my point. He's right down the street. He's got an office in the Supreme Court. You could walk from the Methodist building over there. It's in the same block. Just walk over and talk to the man. Say, hey, we got a problem with bad faith in America. What do we do? What does the church do? That would be, there's an idea. What do you think? All right, hang on a second. So back to our story in this court case. If you were to, download this, which is easy enough to find, and just put in the word faith and start searching on it, you'd see that they use it quite often. More than 150 years ago, this court held that courts may exercise no jurisdiction over matters that concern theological controversy or church discipline. Matters of faith are theological controversy. Is it okay to lie or not? Since then, the court has repeatedly reaffirmed this religious autonomy doctrine, explaining that the First Amendment guarantees a spirit of freedom for the religious organizations and independence from secular control or manipulation. So if you don't care about bad faith, neither do they. The power to decide for themselves, free from state interference, matters of church government as well as those of faith and doctrine. church government as well as those of faith and doctrine. Not your church's faith, just lowercase faith. If you're going to allow bad faith, so is the court, preacher. You got no one to look at. There's no other place to look. You need to look at yourself. It's you. It's your job. It's my job to tell you and show you what you might do with it, but it's your job to go do something about it because you got the flag and you got the authority from the Supreme Court. Power to decide for themselves, free of state interference, matters of church doctrine as well as those of faith and doctrine. I don't need to go any further. Right? If you're going to allow bad faith, it's going to happen. The court isn't going to stop it. Well, now what would you do if you think it's bad faith? That would be the question. Well, in this, what was I looking at here? This had to do with something that Scalia had said, where he's saying that the Supreme Court has never said that a petition, and actually Judge Thomas agreed with him for the reasons set forth Justice Scalia. I seriously doubt the lawsuits are petitions within the original meaning of the petition clause of the First Amendment. Right? A lawsuit is not a petition. So, well, what is? Well, the only man learned of the law is the Solicitor General. I've tried to ask him. He hasn't answered me. Would somebody please go ask him? Hey, how do we petition under the petition clause of the First Amendment? Right? Would somebody from the Methodist building get up out of their chair, go walk over to his office, knock on the door? Hey, the church would like to talk to you. Right? We're confused. Can you help us out? Like the court, however, I need not decide the question today because parties litigated the case on a premise of something else, right? So, in other words, he doesn't need to tell us the answer because that isn't what was actually being, the grievance was, right? They did it. They're only going to deal with what was asked in the court case. I like to hold a petition clause, protects public employees against, yeah. I don't have time to read all this again, so as much as I'd like to. Where did he say here? The court has never actually held that a lawsuit is a constitutionally protected petition, nor does today's petition or today's opinion hold that. This is the opinion of Scalia and Burrow of Doria versus Gunaria. I find a position in lawsuits, proposition that lawsuit is a constitutionally protected petition quite doubtful. The First Amendment petition clause states Congress shall make no law abridging the right of the people to petition the government for redress of grievances, yada, yada, yada. So then they say, well, then it must be that it's a petition to the legislature. But there is no legislature. There's nobody holding office. They didn't take a proper oath of office. We can't do it to them either. Then we should be able to petition to the president. Well, we could if he would take his two proper oaths of office. Donald John Trump could easily be president of the United States. He just needs to, finish up his paperwork. And as soon as he does, well, then you could petition him, and now he could have process issued in the name of the president of the United States because he would be. But right now he's not the president, so he can't do it. He's just the president-elect. See how they've, all they need to do is block, and then it's like we don't have any, there's nothing we can do, right? We don't have any authority unless we can undo the scheme that's been put before us, which is all in the jots and tittles of the law. Hang on now. So let's take a second and let's look at the commission of a captain, right? Dorothy Estelle England. I can't really read her last name, right? But it's her full legal name. No initials, no nicknames. Dorothy Estelle, whatever her last name is, probably just the way it showed up on her Shows up on her birth record. It's from the President of the United States of America. Well, the United States of America is what was established under the Articles of Confederation. If you go and read the Treaty of Peace from 1783, you'll see that King George III says for him and his successors that, he has some kind of dominion over this thing called United States of America. Without the, just United States of America. So, if you look at money, right, if you go look at a dollar, it says the United States of America. Well, that came from this jurisdiction. If you look at your passport, it says United States of America, which didn't come from this jurisdiction. Right? It's a jurisdiction of King George III and his successors. And why that's so important is when we go look at these are supposed to be the commissions of federal judges done by Donald John Trump, who doesn't claim to be the President of the United States of America, just United States of America. King George III and his successors' dominion. Yeah, I got to show that to you too. Hang on, I just didn't do it. Let me find it. Okay, here we go. Treaty of Peace, signed in Paris, September 3rd, 1783, ratified, proclaimed by the Congress of the United States, Continental Congress. That's interesting. See, the Congress of the United States is the Continental Congress. You'll see the thing they call today, they actually call that the Congress of the United States of America. Not with the capitalized, just, they don't say Congress of the United States, they say Congress of the United States of America. But in here, the king's talking about himself and saying that please the divine providence to dispose the hearts of the most serene and most potent King George III, by grace of God, King of Great Britain, France, Ireland, Defender of the Faith, Duke of Brunswick and Luxembourg, Arch-Treasurer and Prince-Elector of the Holy Roman Empire, and of the United States of America. Right, with the not capitalized. United States of America. That's what's on your passport. United States of America. You're a citizen of King George III and his successors. Or you're their property, one or the other. Well, this is all part of the scheme that we're living under. Right? This isn't the same as the United States of America that this captain was commissioned under. And there's the seal of the Army and the Brigadier General and the Secretary of the Army, and all this is allowed by law, as it turns out, right, that they could do that. But, this is an office under the executive branch. All right, so now let's go look at the schemers. Donald J. Trump, that's not his full legal name, so he can't do anything. President of United States of America, well, that's King George III's jurisdiction. Supposed to be for a judge and testimony whereof, blah, 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 right? Scribble, scribble, scribble. I guess that's supposed to be his scribble. This isn't the Great Seal of the United States of America, which an officer of the United States would have. This is a seal of the Department of Justice, signed by the Attorney General. Well, let's compare that to what Marbury Madison said, which was this case back in 1803, which, most people will say, well, that file this kind of stuff. Well, that's what determined judicial review. Well, that's the cover. What it actually determined is things to do with commissions. The President of the United States, by signing the commission, appointed Mr. Marbury a Justice of the Peace of the County of Washington in the District of Columbia, and the seal of the United States affixed thereto by the Secretary of State is conclusive testimony of the veracity of the signature and the completion of the appointment. Well, the President of the United States of America is the one that did the paperwork, not United States. All right, and it doesn't have the seal of the United States on it, affixed by the Secretary of State. It's got the Department of Justice seal affixed by the Attorney General. Right? United States of America. It doesn't say United States. This is bad faith. I'm not blaming Donald John Trump. He's being fooled. I'm trying to help Donald John Trump be the president. But this isn't going to make it. This is This is at best some kind of administrative office, right? But it's not. This judge, which is supposed to be the United States Circuit Judge of this whatever Seventh Circuit, is not a judge in the judicial branch. They're an administrative judge in the administrative branch, right? It's more like a territorial judge than Article 3 judge. So, whatever court he represents is not an Article 3 court. And there's like 72 of these or so. I mean, that's just the same thing, one after another. Donald J. Trump, United States of America, wrong seal, Attorney General, right? Simulation of an officer of the United States, but not an officer of the United States. To enable the court to issue mandamus to compel delivery commission of a public office by the Secretary of State, it must be shown that it exercised an appellate jurisdiction. Okay, so but still, the commission of a public office by the Secretary of State. That isn't what happened. As last term on the affidavits then read and filed with the clerk, a rule was granted in the case requiring the Secretary of State to show cause why a mandamus should not issue, directing him to deliver to William Marbury his commission as a justice of the peace for the county of Washington and the District of Columbia. Right? Third section declares he shall commission all officers of the United States. Right? Not United States of America, all officers of the United States. An act of Congress directs the Secretary of State to keep the seal of the United States, to make out and record and affix the seal on all civil commissions to officers of the United States to be appointed by the President. Well, that isn't what's happening. So what is happening? Let's go look at how they are doing it. Okay, because that's in Title V, Commission of an Officer. Let's look at this, right? Title V, United States Code, has to do with the government, organization, and employees. The President may make out and deliver, after adjournment of the Senate, the commission of an officer whose appointment has been confirmed by the Senate. All right, so he has to wait till after the adjournment of the Senate and then commission an officer whose appointment has been confirmed by the Senate. Got it. Except as provided by subsection B and C, the Secretary of State shall make out and record and affix the seal of the United States to the commission of an officer appointed by the President. The seal of the United States may not be affixed to a commission before the commission has been signed by the President. Well, that's saying, okay, except for the next two sections, it's going to have a seal of the United States affixed by the Secretary of State. What's B say? The commission of an officer in the civil service or uniformed services under the control of the Secretary of Agriculture, the Secretary of Commerce, the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of Military Department, the Secretary of the Interior, the Secretary of Homeland Security, or the Secretary of Treasury shall be made out and recorded in the department in which he is to serve under the seal of that department. The department seal may not be affixed to the commission before the commission has been signed by the President. Well, what do all of these have in common? Right? They're all under the executive branch. Right? These are all executive branch officers. There's no judicial officer, nothing about a judicial judge. Okay, now the commission of judicial officers and United States attorneys and marshals appointed by the President by and with the advice and consent of the Senate and other commissions which before August 8th, 1888 were prepared at the Department of State on the requisition of the Attorney General shall be made out and recorded in the Department of Justice under the seal of the department and countersigned by the Attorney General, which is what we just saw. But it's not the Attorney General that requisitions judicial officers in an Article 3 court. You don't have a thing to do with it. He's an executive officer in the administration. right? The judicial branch of government is a completely different branch, just like the Congress is supposed to be. So the Attorney General can't requisition an officer for the judicial branch. Only the judicial branch can. So that's showing that all of these alleged commissions, if they were anything, are just for administrative judges. They're not judicial judges under the under Article 3 of the Constitution. I don't know what to tell you. Now, I'm not saying they can't be. I'm just saying that with this piece of paper, they're not. Right? That these commissions would have to be done over. They have to be put under this, the Great Seal of the United States. Because the Attorney General can't requisition an officer into the executive or into the judicial branch. It's a different branch of government. That isn't that hard to understand, is it? But that's what they're doing, right? And really, they're not even doing that. They're just pretending to do that. It looks like that's what they're doing. Okay. Let me get these in order first. Hang on here. Okay, so let's look at a little more scheming that's going on. This has actually been done more than once, but in Law 105, Stat 44, which is 105th Congress, Statutes at Large, page 44, Public Law 102-14, March 20th, 1991, it says, whereas Congress recognizes the historical tradition and ethical values and principles which are the basis of civilized society and upon which our great nation was founded, whereas these ethical values and principles have been the bedrock of society from the dawn of civilization when they were known as the 7 Noahide laws. Well, the Congress just said this nation is founded on the 7 Noahide laws. I disagree. It wasn't founded on the 7 Noahide laws at all. If it was founded on anything religious, it would have been on the 10 Commandments. But I say it's a Christian nation. And even the 10 Commandments, while they're the law, it's not the Christian nation's law. It's, we're under the New Testament. We're not under the law, we're under grace. But this is the scheme. We're under the 7 Noahide laws, and the 7 Noahide laws are the basis of Talmudic law, and that's what we're being governed by. Whereas in tribute to this great spiritual leader, the Rebbe, this is 90th year, will be seen as education and giving. Yeah, the year in which we turn to educate and charity, return the world to the moral and ethical values contained in the 7 Noahide laws. Well, in those 7 Noahide laws, if you blaspheme God, you can have your head cut off. Okay, well, the Jews don't believe that Jesus is God. So if I say Jesus is God, they would cut my head off. Right? There is no such thing as a mix of Judeo-Christians. You're either a Jew or you're a Christian. Either you love Jesus and say he's God, or you hate Jesus and you're going to put him on the tree again if he ever shows up because you don't believe he's God. And really, the two books, the New Testament and the Old Testament, they should be put in the same book. I mean, whoever did that did it for a reason, because if you listen to or read about what George Washington did, when he went to swear on the Bible, he opened the Bible up, right? He opened it to the New Testament, is what I say, because if you put your hand on the cover, you put your hand on the Old Testament. So, it's a scheme by people that practice Talmudic law. I'm not even saying that they're Talmudic Jews. They're just people that say we need to use that to our advantage, right? That's the log book they're using. They're using Talmudic law, which allows you to have sex with children and treat them like slaves, and you can tie your neighbor up, and if he starves, well, it's not murder. He didn't, he just starved. It wasn't murder. You just bound him. It's really, really evil stuff. Really evil. So, welcome to America, right? There's people in Congress. That That was signed by George Sr. Bush, by the way. Here's the oath that they say that they take, which is 5 USC 3331, right? Oath of office. An individual, except the president, elected or appointed to an office of honor or profit in the civil service or uniformed services, right? That didn't say the judicial branch. It didn't say the legislative branch. It said in the civil service or uniformed services. Shall take the following oath. I state your name, which would be Robert Allen Rytlewski, no initials, no nicknames. Got to use your full legal name if you're going to take an oath, or, well, you could say it was bad faith. Do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I will take this obligation freely without any mental reservation, purposes of evasion, and I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office of which I am about to enter. So help me God. Well, that's a religious test. That's just, that's an unconstitutional oath. You can't take that and say that you've satisfied the 6th article of the Constitution. That's right here, right? The laws of the United States. Acts of the First Congress of the United States. Where it said, being enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in the Congress assembled, that the oath or affirmation required by the 6th article of the Constitution of the United States shall be administered in the form following. I state your name, do solemnly swear or affirm, as case may be, that I will support the Constitution of the United States, period. That the oath or affirmation shall be administered within 3 days of passing this act, and so forth and so on. And so there you are, right? This is the form to wit. I, Robert Allen Rytlewski, just solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States. That's the oath that the Congress expected you to take in order to satisfy the 6th article of the Constitution. Not anything extra, not anything different, not without your name, not any other form, not any other style, nothing other than this satisfies the 6th article of the Constitution. Well, that same oath now is in 4 USC 101. Oh, come on, man. There we go, 4 USC 101, which is Title 4 United States Code, Section 101. Every member of state legislature and every executive and judicial officer of the state shall, before he proceeds to execute duties of his office, take an oath in the following form. It's exactly the same, and that it's not the oath that they're taking. Not even close. Now, all of this is covered on how to do this stuff. Right? Pastors, you listening? The Congressional Research Service, they have all these manuals that talk about how things are supposed to be done. Qualifications of a member of Congress. So if you were to treat this like a procedure and get a man learned in the law that's honest to sit there and, to basically make sure the procedure's been followed, well, by the time you got done with this, you would have somebody who was qualified to sit in Congress. Right? And if you can't check all these off, check, and say everything's been done properly, whatever it is, doesn't matter. Check. Got all, do them all, every jot and tittle. Everything's got to be done. And when they were done, and it was done right, they would be in Congress. So things like all Congress people in Congress, when they come to D.C., they come with a certificate of election. But the certificate of election isn't in their full legal name, and it wasn't signed by the governor in their full legal name, and it wasn't countersigned by the Secretary of State in their full legal name. It's just a counterfeit. And that's how you tell, or that's how the president is supposed to be able to tell if the states are in rebellion or not. This is in the pre-Emancipation Proclamation and the Proclamation, and the Emancipation Proclamation, that talks about doing these things in good faith. And they weren't done. So, this is how somebody from Congress would be qualified for a member of Congress. And then on the first day of Congress, what they're supposed to do. Well, one of the things they're supposed to do is take an oath of office. The oath of office for newly elected and re-elected members administered by the Speaker. Right? This is supposed to be on the first day. So if you go look at what the first day of Congress is and say, well, where does it show that they did the oath of office in the congressional record? It's not in there. Because they didn't, they're not doing this. A doctrine resolution by allow a judge or a member of Congress to administer the oath of office. Yep. Oath of office for members elect. So, again, right, I'm not going to take the time to go through this whole thing, but that's all you would have to do is get somebody learned in the law to sit down with the book and say, okay, let's start at page 1 and go to the end and make sure all these little jots and tittles are done. And we'll make up our little cheat sheet of things to go look at to make sure that this and this and this are done. And if they're all done, then, well, they complied. Well, they have the same thing for the appointment process for circuit and district court nominations. And in here, where did it have that? Because, they're not doing this, right? Either, of course. It talks about President signs the commission upon notification. Nominee's confirmation. President performs next step. Sign the confirmation. The commission is a formal document empowering a nominee to assume judicial office, which the president must sign before the nominee can begin his or her duties. The date of the nominee's commission is the date the president signs, usually a few days Senate confirmation. The commission is transmitted to the Department of Justice, which then sends it, as well as a packet of other documents, to the nominee. But it's not a commission until it has the frickin' seal on it. Then it goes to the Department of Justice. The appointment of a commission packet to the Department of Justice includes various forms to be accompany the statutory oath of office, which each circuit and judicial judge must take before exercising the authority of the United States, which is the one we just looked at, 4 U.S.C. 101. This is the oath they need to take. This is the 101 Stat 23. Being enacted, right? They all need to take this oath. Okay, so where's it at? The oath of office is orally administered and so forth and so on. And the oath is a combination of a judicial oath required of every justice and every judge in the United States under 28 U.S.C. 453, and the general oath administered to all federal government officials set forth in 5 U.S.C. 3331. But that one has a religious test, so you have to do one without a religious test. You can have other oaths after the fact, right? But the one to be an officer, to claim any authority under the United States, does not require any religious test. It's just one line. I, Robert Allen Radlewski, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States. Okay, let's get that one done. Okay, now I can take an office in the United States. Now this office here has another oath, and this office here has another oath. This office here, it's got its own oath, but to get there, I had to have done this one first. That's why I believe it works. Oh, hang on a minute. Come on. Okay, a little bit further in here, it shows that this is the oath apparently that they're taking, although it doesn't say that, right? It's under a line, and they have I, insert the judge's name, right? Full legal name. Do solemnly swear, yada, 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 yada. They got to do all this, and then it says, well, help me God. So this cannot be an oath that satisfies the 6th article of the Constitution. If they're doing it all as one oath, then this one doesn't work. Because it says, so help me God. No way around it, right? The people sitting there, if this is the oath they took, are not judges under the Constitution, or they're not judicial officers of the judicial branch under the Constitution. They're at best some kind of administrative judge under a military government that was established during the Civil War that's still maintained to this day. It's just hiding behind this facade that we see, that we've been growing up to believe, well, this is what the Constitution says. There it is, but it isn't. It's just a caricature. So, for instance, This is the oath of office of the person pretending to be the governor of Michigan, where it doesn't say I state your name. It's not in there. And this particular Constitution is the Constitution that's in the Michigan Constitution of 1963, except its grammar is incorrect. Capitalized Constitution of this capitalized state is incorrect according to the wording in the Constitution. They're lowercase Constitution and state. This completely changes the frickin' definition of the or the meaning of this oath. She didn't use her full legal name. It's not on there. And this is done by a notary, which is against the law in Michigan. It has to, a state officer like a governor cannot be done by a notary. Which I've shown all that in prior videos, right? So we're not going to spend a lot of time on it. I'm just showing you that here's the evidence that this woman's not the governor. I don't know whose church she goes to, but her pastor needs to go talk to her. Give her some counseling. Say, this is bad faith. You're going to have to fix it. I'm going to have to go to the Methodist building and get the Solicitor General and have the President of the United States issue some process under the name of the President of the United States into the Supreme Court. And charge you with treason because you're usurping an office. Here's the members of Congress, right? So again, this is the thing called the Congressional Record, that the first day of the session was like, the third or the first Tuesday, which isn't January 17th, but it's the first time in the new session where it shows up, where they're talking about oaths. And it's actually after they've adjourned for the day and before they begin again on Friday, right? This is still Thursday evening, apparently, because it doesn't say we're on Friday yet. We're still on Thursday. Where they're pretending that they're going to file this oath of office. Right? The one that's got so help me God in it. And claim that that's the oath they're supposed to take. Well, this doesn't satisfy the 6th article of the Constitution. Jeepers, how many times I got to tell you that's bad faith? To say that this oath satisfies the 6th article of the Constitution. They have taken God's name in vain, and they're saying it satisfies the Constitution. If that doesn't get the church to do something, well, the state isn't going to do anything about it because the church won't. And then these people didn't use their full legal name. This is the name that would be on the oath. And Ralph Lee, he may have. I don't know. Some of them might have. But like Dutch, that's not his full legal name. You got a middle initial. It's not your full legal name. And the problem is they won't let you look at these oaths. When you contact the National Archives to get a copy of these oaths, they say you can't see them for 30 years. Well, I thought it's a public record. How can I not see it for 30 years? Right? But that's what they'll tell you. No, you can't see that. Not for 30 years. Sorry, can't see that one. No, can't help you. And then they'll quit writing to you. So, preacher, pastor, you're condoning bad faith. And that is bad faith. These people go to your churches. The ones doing this go to your churches. You take their donations. And, I'm just telling you, if you're not going to do something about it, the court isn't going to claim any jurisdiction in faith. I guess the court's going to say, I guess you guys are fine with it. There's no reason for them to change. So they put it all in your lap. I don't know what to tell you. It's time to grow up. Grow up, grow a pair, and go out and start talking to them. Because they're not the government. If you're letting these people tell you to do anything, you're listening to a felon. You're listening to a traitor, somebody who's committing treason against the United States because they haven't done this one oath that satisfies the Constitution. You can't get around 1 Stat 23. Very first law passed by the first Congress. After the ratification of the Constitution says this is the oath that satisfies the 6th article of the Constitution. There's no way around it. All right, hang on a second. So to show you it's just not the governor and it's just not the Congress and it's just not the federal judges. No, this goes, all politics is local. Goes right down to local level. This is for the county. Right, so we can start with this. What state of Michigan, county of Kent? Is that the proper venue or is it the state of Michigan, Kent County? Right? Because here this person's saying they're taking office for Kent County, but here it says County of Kent. And here it says County of Kent, State of Michigan. So which one is it? Regardless, it doesn't say I, state your name, so this doesn't satisfy, right? 4 USC 101. So that's all we need to worry about today, right? Till we get that one straightened out. The rest of these really don't matter. But they don't have that one. They don't have 4 USC 101 filed. This is what they filed. So this is a counterfeit oath of office filed under an assumed name. Right? It's a simulated legal process under color of law. It's a violation of the Michigan Penal Code, MCL 217 or MCL 750.217C. It's an impersonation of an officer under federal law. I think that's 18 USC 912. Right, here's another one. This person's supposed to be my county commissioner. But Diane's got a middle name. And she didn't use it here, and she didn't put her name in here, so it's no good. This is supposed to be a prosecutor. Right? Kalkaska County prosecutor. This is a guy to put people in prison. But he doesn't have an oath of office to do it. He just, so it's a private prison. Well, there's laws against that. But it doesn't seem to matter because this guy goes to church on Sunday and his preacher ain't barking at him. What else we got? Oh, now we're going to have a judge. Well, the judge didn't do it either. I didn't state his name, so all he did is committed a crime. P. William O'Grady. That's not his name, right? He doesn't have a first initial for a name. Simulated, goes on and on and on and on. Simulated probate judge, simulated Kirk A. Cashane, right? Can't use a middle initial for your full legal name. This got the moose looking over his back instead of towards the seal. I mean, they're just, throwing it in our face and make it so freaking obvious. And yet they'll be in church. Well, they won't be in church this Sunday because, hey, we're under quarantine. Actually, I'm a prisoner of war because of the current situation, but other people think they're under quarantine. Commission Office of the Governor. Kathleen Kitty T. Gordon. Well, there is no Kitty. Right? That can't be the judge of anything. It goes on and on and on. This one's pretty close, but but her commission isn't proper. So you need both to go together. And here she didn't put her, Kitty on her commission, but she put it in, she didn't put it in her oath, but she put it in her commission. We only have one name, what is this? This is for Oakfield Town. This is, township, which I thought at first, well, they actually did it right because it's got his full legal name, William Greg Dean, do solemnly swear I will support the Constitution of the United States. But that's where it needs to end. And the Constitution of Michigan, I will faithfully perform duty of supervisor in the township of Oakfield, county of Kent, state of Michigan, according to the best of my ability, so help me God. But those aren't the proper jurisdictions. It's Oakfield Township, Kent County, Michigan, not Township of Oakfield, County of Kent, State of Michigan. And he took a unconstitutional religious test. Same thing with these guys, right? Same unconstitutional oath. Same unconstitutional oath, right? So this is, this is local. This is all the way down to the township hall. It isn't just in D.C. This is right down the street. This building is, less than a mile away from me. And it's full of people that are enemies of the United States simply because they didn't take the proper oath of office. They may not have meant it, but it doesn't matter. It's wrong. I'm pointing it out, and something should be done about it. And so now I'm telling the church, because the Supreme Court isn't going to says the courts have no jurisdiction in matters of faith. That's up to the church to decide. So church, you got to condone. You can't condone this bad faith. You got to go talk to them people and go through the upline, up through the gold fringe flags that you have, all the way to the Methodist building, to your contact there, and tell them. Right? And, all you need to do is walk around with Just get a copy of this. Jeepers. You get one stat 23 too if you want to. It's a little more, pretty, but this is all you need. Just say, look, you're going to have to show me the oath that satisfies this section of 4 USC 101. If you haven't done it right, we're going to have to go get it fixed. Right? So how are we going to do that? And either get everybody to fix it that wants to have it fixed and, do what they're going to do, and the rest of them kick out and, do whatever you need to do then. But quit trying to tell me that these people have any authority over me, because there isn't any of them that's done it right. I have. I'm a veteran. I have a proper oath of office. I stated my name. And mine's a oath of enlistment, and so I can say, so help me God, because I'm not taking an office. I'm a non-commissioned officer. Right? So I don't need a commission. I don't have to do what the Constitution says for an office of a commissioned officer. I took the oath they wanted me to take to be oath of enlistment. And the way that the commissioned officers do it, I think what they've done is they've taken the so help me God out of their oath by the way they have it worded on their document. See if I have that real quick, because that's interesting to look at. Right, because I wouldn't be surprised that Donald John Trump has to fill one of these out as Commander-in-Chief. All right, Army of the United States without component. I, full legal name, first name, middle name, last name, with your Social Security number, which authenticates your name, because there will only be one of those names with that Social Security number. But there could be more than one of these names, right? So this is how you authenticate who it is we're speaking of. And then they got down here and they put so help me God in uppercase instead of lowercase or proper case. So it's like, well, they took it out of the oath. In fact, thinking about this now, because they did use a semicolon. And in a semicolon, the first part of something can have a different meaning than the second part of something. They could be, I don't want to say in conflict, but they can be different definitions for the same thing. Right? So I'm saying that in this case, they ended it here, and that this so help me God really isn't in their oath. Right? Which that would then make this a constitutional oath of office. But they don't take it. See, an officer doesn't take an oath to the president. It's in an enlisted man's oath that he's taking an oath to the president. But there's no oath here to the president. And so, if the commander-in-chief, President Donald John Trump, doesn't want to do it right, well then he's not here. Who's next in line? Who is after the commander-in-chief in the military command chain of command? I'm going to say it's the chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Miley. You're in charge, General. Right? Please take over. If Donald John Trump wants to get his paperwork right and do it right, I'm fine with that. But until then, you have to be in charge, General, because he isn't. He's signing papers as Donald J. Trump. Right? He's doing this. This is unacceptable. This isn't my country. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America? That isn't what it said. That's not what's on. Is this? Are they still doing it this way? Because I couldn't find a newer version of a commissioned officer's oath. It'd be nice to see one. If there's any commissioned officers listening, you want to send me a copy of your commission, I would love to see it, see how it's been done. Right? But this says the United States of America, which is the thing on the money. United States of America is jurisdiction of King George III and his successors. And that's where they have us, but all of our wealth is in the United States of America, in the Republic, and we're kind of like stuck in the democracy, and they don't want to let us out. Because it's being governed by Noahide laws, right? That's what's being governed by Noahide laws is the United States of America. not the United States of America, established under the Articles of Confederation. Well, I think we beat that horse to death, and I hope not to have to do another video on it. But man, if we can't get past this one square, if I can't convince somebody that, hey, this is wrong, we got to fix it, then our ass is in a lot of trouble. Because we have a chance right now to turn this whole, turn the money changers' tables over on them completely. And we could usher in the 1,000-year reign of Christ as spoken of in Revelations. No, he wasn't kidding, and he didn't mean something other than 1,000 years. That's what will happen. Whenever we establish his kingdom, we'll have a 1,000-year reign of Christ. And all that means is to do things through the New Testament instead of the Old Testament. And everything we do today is through the Old Testament. When you go to court, you go to a court of the false accuser. You're going to the same court they took Jesus to. What do you think's going to happen? Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Okay. You all have a great day, and hope you got something out of it. And please turn this on to a preacher. Tell them to watch. And have them call me if they have any questions. I'll be happy to try to answer them. If they're happy to try to do something, I'm happy to try to answer. We'll see you later.